Welcome back. Straight away we move to our newspaper review, and as usual, of course, we kickstart with the Daily Trust, and the bolder headline states how Buhari was honored, buried. You can read the full story on pages 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then we have And then we have Maman Daura speaks on Buhari's last moment. You can read the story on page 6 of the daily newspaper. And then also we have Yobe suspends SEC meeting for Buhari, holds prayer session. Buni attends ex-president's burial in Daura. You can read the full story on page 7 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Do well to get yourself a copy of the Daily Trust newspaper for more information.
All right, next up we have the Guardian newspaper. Right on the top left, we have Saudi Arabia, Moroccan king mourn Buhari, praise service to Nigeria. That's on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. We have Dangote faults capital flight, insists on investing in Nigeria. At the bottom, we have lawyers bicker as Ibas inaugurates board's commission. At the on the right, we have Senate declines Natasha's recall, insists no binding order. Nigeria meets OPEC quota first time in 5 months, falls short of 2025 benchmark. That is on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. We have TikTok restricts 211 million offensive videos, removes 3.6 billion from Nigeria. That is on page 4 of the Guardian. Of fresh plateau onslaught claims 20 injures several on the Guardian newspaper. That's all on the Guardian. Make sure you grab yourself a copy and stay informed.
On the Vanguard, we have Tinubu, some African leaders bid Buhari farewell. You can read the story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And then also we have we're yet to receive formal communication from UAE on reversed visa policy, says federal government. You can read the story on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Gunmen allegedly killed 20 in Plateau night raid. The story is on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. An ex-APC national chairman Oyegun registers with ADC in Edo State. The full story is on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper.
All right, next up we have Daily Independent. Right in front we have Cashew expansion drive. Investors eyed 7.2 trillion naira inflow into the economy. It is set to reposition Nigeria as a world largest producer. Targets production capacity of 2 million MT by 2030. At the top, we have Buhari, end of an era of man with many perspectives. And we have why UAE slammed visa restrictions on Nigeria by federal government. We have 17 years after spending 60 billion naira digital switchover project still in limbo. That's on page 7 of the Daily Independent. We have Akwa Ibom seals $3.5 billion gas deal with NNPC and GACN. That's on page 6 of Daily Independent. Dangote urges wealthy Nigerians to invest in the country, says he defied odds to build $20 billion refinery. Tinubu bows before Buhari's remains as he is laid to rest. Under government firm to sign MOU on establishment of oil refinery. That is on page 7 of Daily Independent. Make sure you grab yourself a copy and stay informed. All right, joining us to review some of the headlines on the pages of today's newspaper is former Director News, Voice of Nigeria, Ben Shemang. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Shemang. All right, do we have Mr. Shemang online?
Yes, I'm on. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning.
Morning, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. So let's move straight ahead to Daily Trust, and where we have the bolder headlines, how Buhari was honored and buried. Please kindly share your thoughts on that.
Yes, the descriptions are very, very apt and accurate. He was honored. You could see world leaders, you could see diplomats, you could see Nigerians of note, you could see the masses all trooping out to ensure that he is being a kind of a nice bye-bye from us. And you could also see that in terms of military procession, he was given the honor that is due to a military leader, given a honor to a former president, so to speak. You could see the military as he was the commander-in-chief of the armed force. You could see the chief of defense staff. He was charged of the citation. You could see military parades there. They all were dressed in their #1 uniform, ceremonial dress, to honor a man whom honor is due. Outside that, still remember in the State House when the then President Buhari was swearing in his cabinet. I was in there. I was still a State House correspondent. I will remember this phrase: "You will be judged based on how many people you bring out from poverty." That was his charge to all his ministers. But again, that is left to be seen. In the left government, it was then we could hear all sorts of gabbing here and there, corruption here and there, either with the NNPC, you go to airways, you go to some social safety nets like supply of relief materials. Virtually all the heads of these agencies are today facing one corruption or so. So when Buhari came in, who said, "Oh, may Gaskia, the man they can rely on because state forth, I mean, his rightfulness in terms of handling the country, no corruption deals," bearing in mind that when he was in power as military head of state, you could see what he did via war against indiscipline. So Nigerians thought he was going to be super president. Then the other thing I would have my cap for was his ability to also go to the Supreme Court, challenging the fact that it is illegal for governors to keep on holding on to monies made for local governments, bearing in mind that the local governments are the closest to the masses, at the grassroots. But again, the governors, whether they were PDP, or LPP, or you go to Labour, to APC, they all gang together as one party and went to the Supreme Court and challenged the president. And the judgment was that as president, Buhari cannot be a member of the executive and bring a law and want to implement that same law. So he was defeated technically, and the act still continues as we are talking. Buhari didn't like that. Then there was another thing Buhari frowned at. You call it these local government elections. Why is it that anytime a state governor is organizing an election, the party that the governor belongs must win all the chairmanship positions, win all the scholarship positions? Buhari didn't like that. That was never democracy. There's nowhere they say a political party or a politician is loved 100%. But he didn't like all of that, And of course, when we were talking about the fight against insecurity, quite a lot of things will have to give on to him. I was an embedded correspondent. The days of Jonathan, the day when tinubu, Buhari also came on board, we continued in that tradition. So I was going to Maiduguri the times of, or Northeast, the times of Goodluck Jonathan. I knew what was there. And when Buhari came on board, I was still there. General Buratai came in there. I came an embedded correspondent. My constant visitations to these areas made me to a kind of juxtapose or compare the two periods. So when Buhari came on board, things went down. Even elections were able to conduct elections in those areas. And America, of all places, there's this thing you call Lee Healy law. Senator Lee Healy used to be used to be a senator in America. So they brought a law that any country that is fighting a war within itself, like Nigeria is fighting a war against Boko Haram, they believe these are Nigerian citizens. So Nigerians will use the guns from America to kill Nigerians. So America blocked that. But when Donald Trump came in, he waived all that and gave Nigeria one of the greatest war weapons called the Super Tucanos. Now we have them, and via via Buhari. So the tradition still continues. So Buhari actually played his role as a politician, as a statesman, even though, yes, you see that there were some weaknesses here and there.
All right, let's look at a story on The Guardian. It says Senate declines Natasha's recall, insists no binding order. What is your take on that and, the back and forth that's been happening?
Honestly, I think that when the Senate is saying that the judgment of the court is just an advice, mere advice that is not binding, that what the court did, that the court cannot interfere with what the Senate is doing or the lawmakers are doing in whatever way. It is not true. When you make the law, who interprets the same law? Are you saying that the judiciary does not exist? Who has expunged the judiciary from the system of governance? If you do that, it's incomplete. But one is again also worried as to the act of Natasha. Here you are, a court saying, look, the Senate is wrong to have suspended you this way. It means the good people of Kogi Central do not have a representation in the Senate, which is wrong. Now, however, Natasha was told not to address the press, not to appear in some other places like that, and she was told to apologize. She's saying she's not going to do apology. She's rather going to appeal that she cannot pay the fine of 5 million naira. Here you are, you have a judgment in your favor. You want to resume work, but also rejecting one part of the law. So one is just confused. But the more worry is that of the Senate. When you say the judiciary simply gave you an advice, and an advice, you can take or not take. Just like when they move a motion, we want to move a motion, we want to advise this, there are also advisories they advise that are not binding to. So it simply means we are moving towards anarchy. I think they should just obey the law.
Okay, on Daily Independent, we have Dangote urges wealthy Nigerians to invest in the country. He says he defied odds to build $20 billion refinery. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, there was a time Buhari went to Egypt. I was part of that team that went to Egypt, and we were talking about Africa doing what they call intra-African trade. Trade in yourselves.